All right, so I am so excited to be here. A little bit of my background, why this is kind of like a full circle awesome moment for me is I'm from the East Bay, played for La Miranda and for Mustang, so I should get some shouts. Yeah, there's a couple of those out there. Okay, maybe some booze? No? Okay. And I coach for the Fusion, so awesome to see some of those maroon colors out here. But I'm so excited to be here. It was an opportunity for me to come home and see my family, spend some time with you. And I'm really all about vibes. Vibes are really important to me, so I'm going to need us to like really lean in, and I need some energy from the crowd. I also am probably going to ask you guys some questions. As a coach, I feel like a lot of my responsibility is to also be a teacher. Telling you a little bit about just kind of my story, my journey from being a player to being a coach. Grew up playing in the East Bay. I played a lot of different sports, but soccer was the one kind of true passion that I had. And I think being a multi-sport athlete is really important. But soccer is just like the love of my life and something that, regardless of what I've been doing in my path and my journey, I just kept coming back to soccer. I grew up, my maiden name is Ham, so I'm not related to Mia. However, there was a lot of pressure that probably self-inflicted growing up to, you know, keep the Ham brand, you know, and I wanted to make sure that I was doing our last name, you know, due diligence, and having Mia Ham as a role model for me was something that was really, really pretty special and unique. I used to lie and tell people that I was her sister. I'm not, and I think it gave me some validation here and there. But what I want to tell you before I kind of get started is that the hardest part of almost anything meaningful is showing up, okay? And I think that's something that's really, really important for young players to know. And when, in this kind of day and age where everybody's looking for the next best thing and, you know, trying to navigate, do I stay with my club? How do I get into college soccer? I want to be on the national team. With all the huge opportunities that there are now to be a professional, there is not an easy path. And actually what I have found throughout my entire career is that showing up and trying is really absolutely the hardest part, and that you're going to surprise yourself when you go through the hard things. And in order to have success, you have to embrace challenge, you have to lean into adversity, and that's what's going to give you the most amount of pride, okay? And something I get asked a lot as a coach is, how do I build confidence? Okay, and I know with young women and young girls, confidence is a really huge piece to your development, right? And maybe you lose confidence as a player, maybe your coach isn't inspiring, or maybe you're not having the success that you had, or you didn't make a team, or maybe you see some players are taller than you, they're bigger, faster, stronger. All of those things can become part of your journey when you have a different expectation and you see it through a lens of, I'm gonna embrace this challenge and I'm gonna lean into it. So, tell you a couple stories. I have a million stories, but I also only have 10 minutes, so I'm going to just kind of tell you a little bit about my path. And it kind of starts with just testing your limits, okay? You'll never know if you don't try. So, when I was in 8th grade, so this is not that long ago, but like kind of long ago, ODP used to be run a little bit differently than it is now. ODP used to be the way that you would make the national team. And I got invited to, I made the regional team, and that was, the 14 states on the West Coast. There's 4 regions, and I didn't get picked to the national pool. And that was a really big challenge for me. I was really upset because I had always been the best player on my club team and kind of in the area. And when I didn't make the national pool, I kind of remember having this moment, even as a 13-year-old, where I felt like, I'm good at other sports, like do I want to keep playing, right? Is soccer actually something that I love doing? Because I'd never failed, in a sense. And to me, this seemed as like I was now a failure. But what came out of that was just this recognition that, I needed to try harder. I needed to really dig my heels in and say, okay, like do some self-reflection and think about what is it about my game that isn't at the level that it needs to be. So instead of getting mad, right, at the coaches for them not like seeing how good I was, or for me looking at my teammates and feeling like jealousy and envy. I really looked internally and I went back to work, right? I went back to work. I did more reps on the soccer field. I asked my coach to spend extra time with me. I really looked inward and thought, I need to push myself. And I used that challenge and that adversity as an opportunity for me to build confidence, okay? And how you build confidence is you build trust with yourself. The way you build trust with yourself is by preparing and by actually doing the work that you need to do in order to have success. So that next year, I went back the following year and thought that I had done all the right things. I didn't make the national pool again. And that really was devastating in a different way because I thought I'd done it, right? I thought I was going to make it this time because I'd gotten so much better. And even in that development, you have that moment, and this is again as a young player, a lot of you guys are around that age where, you know, I wanted to give up. But again, I knew how much growth I had had, not just as a player, but as a person by going through that tough year and not making a team that I wanted to. It allowed me to really, again, invest in myself and think this was a challenge that now I know I can do hard things, I know I can come back from this. So that following year, I didn't give up, I kept coming back, and I ended up making the national pool by my junior year. It was awesome. I was so proud of myself, I was so excited, and a couple months after making the pool, I got invited to go to Italy. I tore my ACL. A week before getting to go spend my first time with the youth national team. And we all have injuries. Unfortunately, soccer, there's a ton of injuries, right? But because I had done something challenging before, I'd gotten through something hard, I used that injury as a means to become a student of the game, to look at it with a different lens and say, all right, I'm not going to be sad about this, even though I was. I'm going to use this challenge as a way to prove to myself and build confidence that I can do hard things and I can come back from this. So doing whatever it is that you guys do now, right? But those are the days when things are the most challenging. You know that you can look within yourself and identify there's something that can, you know, I can get better through this. So what does it mean to go for gold? What do you guys think? What do you got? Push harder and to win, for sure. What do you got?
Not just try to win, actually do it.
Yes, girl, right? Working hard looks very different than competing hard.
Like, do the hardest you can.
Hardest you can, yes. Okay, exceeding the limits that have been set, yeah. Getting all the way to the edge.
Keep trying, but not stopping.
I love that, not stopping, that's big time, yep.
Not giving up.
Not giving up, love it.
Go for the limit.
Okay, so yeah, test your limits, yeah. I have confidence to do hard things, yeah. 100%, and that's gonna look different on different days, right? You're 100% one day, might be the best you've ever played, but maybe on one day you're super tired, you've got distractions, there's other things, but giving your best on that day is huge. Get out of your comfort zone, I love that, big time. All right, so the way that I look at it, you guys basically, like I said, you already got all the answers. Okay, for me it's overcoming challenges, okay, taking risks, and inspiring yourself to grow. So those three things I think have become really, really important for me in my journey. So after I came back from tearing my ACL, which was again a big challenge, but unfortunately something that's pretty common, so after that journey, I ended up, that was my junior year, I ended up getting a scholarship to play soccer at Cal. I won NCS championship for my high school for the first time ever. I won back-to-back NCS championships in softball, and I was then league MVP. So I came back bigger, faster, stronger, and I never ever would have had that ability had I not gone through those other challenges early on. So learning to do hard things and actually like not fearing them, but like inviting them in some way, that struggle, there's always growth on the other side of that. So resilience is a huge part of your success. And I said, believe in yourself and all that you are. Know that there is something inside of you that is greater than any obstacle. So after I was done playing in college, I got drafted to play in the WPS, which it's the NWSL now. It started as Inclusa, then it was the WPS, and then now it's the NWSL. And my first season, I ended up getting cut from the team. And I was very upset, common theme, okay? That's what happens. And, I kind of had that moment again where I felt like, all right, is this time? Is this a sign telling me that I should just be done? Maybe there's a different interest, maybe there's something else I like outside of soccer. Well, there isn't, turns out. And so I trained harder. I went back on it, trained harder, and refused to give up. And the next season, I was able to actually be an assistant at Cal in between my 2 pro seasons. And I got kind of that first taste of what it was like to coach. And to be on that side of the bench and to kind of be on that side of the table, I really started to identify with something that I started to feel more passionate about the tactics of the game and about managing players, putting together a team and building a program. So after my 1 season, when I was the assistant at Cal, I actually signed with the Atlanta Beat in my 2nd season playing pro, and that was an interesting season because that league ended up folding, which was pretty sad, which is why this is pretty amazing, just seeing all these girls here and having NWSL players. It's like, honestly, I could get really emotional about it, but it's pretty special. And after that season, I found myself just thinking about the game in a different way and really wanting to, I started to question the coach's decisions. And I'd never really done that as a player. I always just wanted to, I was kind of like a yes girl, right? Coach told me to run through a wall, I'm gonna run through a wall, right? Coach told me to do this is a pattern, and I started to question the way that the coach was doing things, and maybe that was good, maybe that was bad. But what it taught me about myself was that I started to have a brain for wanting to coach more and to be on that side of it. And so I ended up getting hired after I was done playing. I went to grad school and got my master's in sports psychology. And going through that, learning the educational piece to how to build a team and how to instill confidence in players, I always thought I had a really good grasp on the mental side of the game. And so that was something that felt really natural for me, was to be in that coaching chair. So I got hired at Santa Rosa Junior College when I was 28 years old as the head coach. And I'd only been a coach as an assistant for like 3 months. So to be fair, I didn't really know what I was doing, but I knew that I loved it, and I knew that I could be passionate about it. And to me, any sort of thing that was challenging throughout my career, that passion and that love that I had for the game and the passion that I had for impacting other people was going to carry me through, and I knew I would be okay. So that first year with Santa Rosa, it was, I was only a couple years older than a lot of the players, so that presented its own challenges. I was working with a different demographic of women, where a lot of them were first-generation college students. They had to work full-time. Some of them were moms. There was all sorts of different challenges that I couldn't identify with. What we could identify with, though, was that we both loved the game, and we loved what it did for us on and off the field in terms of impacting each other's lives, helping each other grow. And those 3 years that I was at Santa Rosa was probably the most I've ever learned about myself and how to connect with players and how to get the most out of people. And what it did for me also was it made me love soccer for the love of the game, not just as a competitor. Because a lot of those players that were playing at that level, it was the one part of their day that they could just be very free and just play, right? They didn't have to worry about their responsibilities. And in my career, I'd always been around really high performers where soccer was their life, soccer was their identity. And to be with this young group of women that were so passionate about soccer, but also had a whole identity outside of the game, was really valuable to me when I was thinking about how I can holistically coach my players moving forward. So after Santa Rosa, I got hired at San Francisco State, and I was there for 4 seasons, and again, that was a really incredible experience for a lot of different reasons. It was my first job in the NCAA, and I loved it. Again, I learned so much, and I felt like that was exactly where I needed to be at in terms of my career growth. I have a very different path to being a head coach at a Power 4 school, which is Oregon's considered a Power 4 university. Most coaches are assistants for a few years or a long time before they get their head coaching opportunity, but I had to make it up as I went. I started very young and I didn't really have a blueprint for it. So I'm really grateful for my journey because I don't want to, and I'm not trying to talk bad about anybody, but I didn't skip steps. right? Like I started at the bottom and I worked my way all the way up. And it was really incredible because every time I took over a program, so Oregon's my fourth program, is I knew I could do it because I'd done something hard before. And that challenge is so important for your growth. And so one of the biggest lessons that I've learned is really just about competing with yourself. I think as young women, as young girls, we think a lot about how we compete with other women, and I think a lot of what society dictates to us and tells us is that your friend, your teammate is your competitor. They are in a game, right, in a lot of ways, but your biggest competitor, right, should be with yourself in terms of your growth, your development. What do you want out of your experience? How can you be the best version of yourself every day? And as a coach, I realized that going through my journey, there was times where there was other coaches that, you know, they got opportunities before I did, and I was like, man, you haven't been in the trenches with me, you haven't been doing the work that I've been doing, right? You catch yourself in that moment where you're like, yeah, but this is valuable in its own right, and I know I'm gonna be better for this. And to have that long-term vision and see it through a lens of, again, like embracing the challenging, embracing that adversity, and knowing that maybe those other coaches, some of the ones I'm competing with, right, that they're not gonna be able to have that same experience that I had. They're not gonna know how to, you know, dig the knot of something because they haven't been coaching as long as I have, right, or they didn't have that experience. And so I'm telling you all of this to really think about your individual journey shouldn't be compared to anybody else's, okay? Especially when you start to look at colleges, it's really easy as parents and as players to look around and say, well, why is so-and-so getting recruited to this place? Or, you know, so-and-so is gonna transfer clubs and go somewhere else to get different opportunities. Run your own race. Run your own race, okay? I would worry very little about what other people are doing, and I know that's easier said than done, but really compete with yourself and think about how can you grow, how can you improve, and how can you expect the most from yourself? How can you maximize your own potential, okay? This is probably one of my favorite pictures of, this is when I was at UC Davis. And I was at Davis for 5 years before got hired at Oregon. I'm 7 months pregnant in this picture, you can't tell, which is why I put it for the back. But it's one of the best wins that I've had in my career because we were playing Long Beach State at Long Beach, and we knew if we won the game, we could win the conference. There was all sorts of like emotion wrapped around it. And I just wanted to show you this because I think it shows like the connection that you can have with your team, the way that you can show up and impact. But years before this, we hadn't ever beat Long Beach. It had been like 40 years since Davis had ever beaten Long Beach State. And so to be in that moment and to have that accomplishment, not just as a player, I was so happy for them in that moment, but for our program and knowing like I had done the things that I needed to do as a coach to prepare my team to get there, even though going into that game, we probably didn't have a lot of confidence because it hadn't been done yet, right? And so believing in yourself and finding a way to impact, okay, and just really competing and knowing that if you just show up and you just try, that's the hardest part, and you'll surprise yourself. So I am really, really grateful to be here and so thankful for this opportunity to kind of be back in my hometown and spend a few minutes with you guys talking about my journey and my story. But I'm so grateful every day for all the different challenges that I faced in my life, and I encourage you to do hard things and to inspire yourself and inspire others to lean into adversity, lean into the challenge, and know that growth's on the other side. Thank you.